Hello, welcome back to the Villa View. It's time for a delayed post-match point for Everton against Aston Villa. It was, of course, Everton 0, Aston Villa 2. This show is sponsored by Purity Ale. If you want to get 10% off everything they have to offer, then use the code #VillaView. I'm Dan Bardell, joined by Neil Dunworth. And Neil, all about the numbers, wasn't it? Unai Emery did not lose 4 games in a row for the first time in his managerial career. And Ollie Watkins did score for the 5th game running to become the first player in Premier League history for Aston Villa Football Club to do that. Wasn't a classic, but for the first hour, I think Villa had plenty to work on in the first hour, but they made a few subs. They seemed to change the game. Instant impact from Buendia coming off the bench, and Villa won relatively comfortably, saw the game out relatively comfortably. Villa fans were magnificent, and turns into a very good day at the office.
Yeah, you mentioned that Villa fans were magnificent. I think I want to just start on that one as well. You know, watching it on TV, you could just hear nothing but Villa fans, Villa fans, Villa fans. And there were times in the game when the Everton fans got really up for it, obviously, because they did lay siege to our goal for last 20 or the second 20 minutes of the first half for sure. You know, we were under the caution, and halftime came at a good time for Aston Villa. But the Aston Villa fans were, you know, they were very vocal throughout the whole game, and I love to hear that, because look, I suppose some people have been calling that, oh, you know, the atmosphere hasn't been great at home games and so on. But the Villa fans, you know, when they show up like that, and they do 99.99999% of the time, it's just fantastic to hear on TV, you know, and fair play to everybody and that. But with regards to the game itself, as you said, to be honest with you, it was a typical Unai Emery game. You know, it was just one of those games. Invite pressure, get your nose in front, and then, you know, hit the team on the break when they come to try and equalize. And when Emery's plans go to plan, that's what happens. We did it against Leeds, did it against Spurs, and we've won like that. Like, I've seen that game 4 or 5 times already, that type of game from Unai Emery since he became Aston Villa manager. And, you know, we as a club kind of have bemoaned lack of identity under Steven Gerrard, and it's almost becoming our identity away from home now, and I'm here for it, and I absolutely love it, because, you know, getting those 3 points, even though maybe, you know, there's still lots to improve on, and with the current makeup of the squad that we have, getting 3 points like that must be really satisfying for those players. It must be really satisfying, and long may it continue, specifically away from home. If we can bring that to home, to Villa Park, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, away form, we've got it down, haven't we, really? Because we've only lost to Manchester City. We go away from home, and generally, when we win, we keep a clean sheet. So we see out the game relatively comfortably as well. I think that's happened a few times. I think the Southampton, the Spurs game and that game, there's a lot of similarities in those 3 performances. You could probably chuck the Brighton one in there as well, albeit Villa went behind that day from a mistake and showed some resilience and bounced back and ended up winning that game. But I do, like you say, identity is the key word. Away from home, I feel it is there. You know, the Villa fans are going to away games knowing what to expect. And at the end of the day, you've had an excellent day anyway if you've been on an away day, because the Villa away fans are unbelievable. So you've had a great time before the game. You then don't really care what the performance is like when you're away from home. You just want to win. So in the main, the Villa away fans are getting that as well. I guess the problem is coming for Villa at the moment is Emery doesn't want that identity at home. At home, he wants to control games. He wants to have like a different identity. He wants the fans and the players to be singing from the same hymn sheet. He wants to entertain the fans, basically, and get the fans up for it. And by and large, except for probably the first game against Manchester United, we haven't succeeded in doing that. But I guess at this stage, you say about bemoaning an identity, to even have that identity away from home and to have taken the points that we have away from home. Since he's arrived, we must have the best away record in the Premier League, or at least in the top 3. We must be right. They've only lost 1 game, and we've won every single game away from home, except for that Manchester City one since Unai Emery came in. So the away form is, I would say, at this point in the journey, ridiculous now.
And unfortunately, I'm not Stato, so
Come
I
on now,
was
be
go. I
better.
was
Do
going to see
better. I
how
could see you were
fast
trying. You
I
thought
was
about
going to
it.
type and see if I could find that information, but no, I don't have it to my fingertips at
Adam
the
will find
moment.
it
But
for us and type it in the chat for us so we
we,
can see it.
but you're right. Actually, I didn't even think of that. We must do because Man City had a faltered away from home recently. Arsenal had a faltering period as well recently too. So I would say ourselves, or maybe even Fulham, might have one of the best because like Fulham
I
just don't
bet my
seem to
life
want
we're in
to
the
lose.
top three. I mean,
Oh
I
yeah,
could,
yeah,
I
I
could
definitely think
die on
so.
air here, but I'm betting my life that Villa are in the Villa are in the top three for away record since Unai Emery's come in. 5 away games now, 4 wins, 1 defeat.
Yeah,
That's pretty good
that's
going.
pretty good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, as much known as the content of Dan Bartel's demise live
Some people
on
might enjoy
YouTube
that more
would
than
be.
the stuff that we normally do. To be
I
fair,
don't want you to pass away live because I've got a bit of a sore throat, so I don't want to
I'm
have
not feeling
to
great.
carry the rest of the podcast. But but yeah, I think you're right. And look, once again, this game at the weekend, while obviously we came out on the right side of it, there were talking points prior to the start with regards to this team and with this game, and everybody, there was trepidation going into this. Sean Dyche being on a really good march with Everton, and as I say, Everton could have been 1-0 up going into half time, and they weren't, and we had some really resolute defending, and for all that header that Tyrone Mings did against Arsenal, whereby he just headed it back into play. I thought he was imperious at the weekend. I thought he was really, really
Stats speak
good.
for themselves.
Absolutely. Like I thought he did absolutely everything right. And he needs to get that consistency. And as he's getting older and he's getting on towards 30, that kind of consistency may start to creep into his game, because he said some really interesting things lately, that he wasn't a centre half until he came to Villa. He wasn't consistently playing centre half. So, the learning of the position and the nuance. He may be just late to the party with regards to that, but he does have that Rick in him at times, but he didn't have it at the weekend. And it's fair to point that out too and say he was really, really, really good at the weekend. And it just shows how much we miss him when he's not in the team.
Yeah, I mean, his clearance off the line, that's as good as a goal, isn't it? And how he didn't knock it in off his knee or anything, I absolutely no idea. I'd resigned myself watching that Villa were 1-0 down and Mings was going to get absolutely panned on social media again for knocking the ball into his own net. I think that's one of the bigger things with Villa. It's a bigger question and probably a bigger thing to look into. They'll have very few players that deliver a 7 out of 10 performance, I always think. Do you think of someone like Gareth Barry, Stillian, Petrov, James Milner, those kind of players at Villa? There would always be a 7 out of 10, at least. They'd very, very, very rarely dip below that. There'd probably not be too many times that they went above that, but they just had that level of consistency. At Villa, I feel now, in the modern day Villa, it's the opposite. You've got players who rarely deliver a 7 out of 10 performance. You've got players that might be an 8 one week, but could very well be a 4 the next. And Mings probably, as much as I love him, he probably falls into that category. And you might be right, as he gets older, he'll become more consistent. And he hasn't played actually that many games at centre back. Ezri Konsa will have played more games as a centre back in his career than Tyrone Mings. Do you know what I'm saying? That Villa have a lot of players who I think Kamara could probably end up being a player who never falls below a 7 out of 10. Maybe delivers an 8 every now and again, but he's always a 7. Will be consistent. I think that will come with him. He's still young as well. But if you look through that Villa 11, I think that could be levelled at a lot of players that they're 4 one week, they're an 8 the next. I mean, there's some that fall below a 4, who we might talk about later. But generally, that's the pattern of Villa, and that's why Villa are a mid-table team.
I'll segue into one of those conversations now, Dan, because as you were as you were talking about it there, I said, yeah, that was the time to bring up Leon Bailey, because at the weekend, things like he was probably the big talking point before the game. I mentioned about there was changes, Emery Buendia being sat down after 12 starts in a row. Leon Bailey started up front. I can see the method in the method there. It was something that I think I've spoken about previously, that if we were going to catch a team on the break, less mobile centre halves there. I know Connor Cody has been spoken of as this unbelievably mobile and nimble centre half, but
he's a good centre half, but he's not mobile.
Yeah, but he hasn't even shown it at Everton this season. Maybe in a back three he is, but obviously, having somebody like Leon Bailey, we should have been able to utilize his pace. it's more and more becoming the case whereby if Leon Bailey has a bad first 5 minutes in a game, you might as well take him off. From a confidence point of view, he seems very, very, very fragile.
His first action's very important in the game, isn't it? There's been a few games, you think Brentford at home, Manchester United at home, maybe Leeds at home as well. Scored in the first 5-10 minutes of those games. And then that gives him something and he's confident. If his first action in the game is poor, he seems to struggle to bounce back from that. I think you're completely right with what you've said there. I said that actually to someone last night when I was out. That's the problem with Leon Bailey. If he doesn't start a game well, that is it. And I don't think it's lack of effort.
No.
Or anything like that at all. Although I will say his dad's been very quiet recently. Leon Bailey's dad, hasn't he? He's not popped up for a while, but he's frustrating, and he's starting to frustrate me as well. I'm a patient person, but he is starting to get on my nerves a little bit now with the way he's in games, because he's offering very little substance, very little style at the moment, and you can't afford to carry people at this level, I don't think.
I agree, and it's all the more highlighted by when Buendia comes on. He wasn't on the field more than maybe 90 seconds, and he plays a ball through to John McGinn, who gets a penalty, and then 20 minutes later, he's sticking the ball in the back of the net himself, So all these kind of situations are heightened when something like that happens. And look, I know there's context in it, and there's opportunity cost of maybe Everton were run ragged at that stage. Maybe they were flagging kind of in midfield. They had it. While they had an awful lot of chances, we had a lot of possession, and they were chasing us for possession in midfield. Buendia comes on and finishes the job. And I know I've no numbers to back that up or anything.
Well, I guess you could say last week Bailey came off the bench against Arsenal, and if that one that hit the bar had gone in, we'd have probably been the same thing last week about Bailey, wouldn't you? So I think there is something in the coming off the bench. Yeah. My personal opinion, anyway, and Greg's wrote a piece on this morning. I actually think Buendia is better for Villa coming off the bench. Yeah. He's done it a number of times now, but I completely agree with what you're saying. It does heighten it, but I do think it would have been quite easy for us to be having this conversation last week after Arsenal.
And the interesting thing is that you'd have to wonder, was Coutinho in front of both of those anyway before he picked up the hamstring injury on Friday?
I think he'd have started if fit.
I think he would have started in that Bailey position. And then Buendia would have been sat down anyway, because I think the game plan was to go with that narrow midfield, the four central midfielders as such, like we have. It really did work. Yeah, absolutely. And Jacob Ramsey played better in this game. He didn't play, he hasn't been playing poorly or anything like that. It's just like last season he was so explosive at times, but he had one of I looked there as well. He had the most progressive carry distance of any player, of any Villa player.
That doesn't surprise me.
So his carrying ability, he needs to be able to carry the ball, because it's one of his biggest strengths, and it's when he stands out in games. And there were times in this game where he didn't have that ability to carry the ball, and the game might have passed him by slightly, but he played well. He played really well, and we looked way more compact in that midfield, and I love to see that, because he's coming back into form. John McGinn was massively in form. I thought his second half, John McGinn's second half performance was brilliant, and obviously we've got the two lads there in the middle of midfield. So when we look at that, Coutinho, I think was slated to start up alongside Ollie Watkins. He gets injured, then he goes with Buendia, or with Bailey up top, and I'm wondering, I don't know why he would have sat down Buendia, but I'm kind of glad he did, as I say, because of that impact that he had coming off the bench. And as you said, Greg has written a piece about it. I haven't seen it, I haven't read it yet, but it's going to be an interesting read for sure.
Yeah, but might as well talk about John McGinn at that point. This is the John McGinn that we loved in the Championship. He's playing in a completely different role, playing from the wide midfield role, but spending a lot of time in the middle of the park, drifting inside. I thought there were signs of it definitely last week against Arsenal. I thought he was good against Arsenal last week. He was good at closing down. He was good on the press. He'd win the ball back. A couple of good ball carries from him as well in there, and he looked like a leader. He looked like he got some confidence back. John McGinn, I thought he was flying against Everton on Saturday, involved in both goals in terms of winning the penalty. Second time he's won a penalty since Emery's come in as well. Same kind of thing, driving into the box, which is what you want to see from John McGinn, because I think he's very good at being a box-to-box midfielder, something he was never allowed to be under the previous manager, and even the manager before. He spent a lot of time probably playing as a six in a double pivot. And then he's the guy that's laid off the ball for Buendia to score as well. So, he's affected the game in a lot of ways, John McGinn on Saturday. And he's great to see. Great to see him back. And Emery seems to really like him.
Yeah. And, Emery didn't take the captain's armband off him. It's okay. It has rotated between himself and Emery Martinez since Emery has been in there. But John McGinn, not only has he had a new haircut that's contributing to him being a bit more
got engaged as well.
And he's engaged as well. Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, but let's look. She's obviously making him get his haircut now and get a half decent haircut. So not that I can talk about half decent haircuts.
My barber actually used to do his hair a couple of years ago, I think, and then McGinn moved away from him. No, he hasn't done it for a couple of years, to be fair. So it doesn't matter, does it? He also does Jedinak's beard. So that's one of the best beards
in the
history of beards. So
absolutely,
he's got that to go off, I think.
Exactly, but John McGinn is he's hitting form at the right time. We've got 14 games left this season, and we're going to need John McGinn. We're going to need absolutely everybody in the squad, and people need to be on form, and people need to, like, when we do have a little bit of rotation that we just spoke about there, the likes of the Baileys need to come in and need to hit the ground running, and Unai Emery understands that and knows that, and if somebody's going to take 2, 3, 4 games to play themselves into form, we can't afford that. We certainly can't, and it's probably the only thing from this game that I would gripe about slightly is that and as you said there, it's becoming frustrating from a Leon Bailey point of view, because he's clearly a talented player, but it's becoming more and more like that the league just doesn't suit him. Doesn't suit him.
I think it was always part of the plan, probably, to make subs on an hour. Look, I'll openly say that for 60 minutes, I was a little bit concerned. I thought Villa was sluggish and giving the ball away quite cheaply. In fairness, Everton were doing it as well. It was a scrappy first hour. That game, it was a scrappy game in general, which you probably expect going to Goodison Park, that the position they're in with Sean Dyche coming in, they're trying to grind out victories at the moment. That's their best way to stand up. So it was probably always going to be a little bit of a scrappy game. But I really thought Villa struggled with the basics in the first 60 minutes. I mean, I'm talking about Kamara and Luiz, who were fantastic footballers, who were both excellent on the ball. I thought they were struggling with the basics for an hour as well. So it was a team thing for an hour, but it did feel like as soon as we made those subs, as soon as Bailey and Luca Dean went off and the Moreno and Buendia came on, we just looked better. And look, as I said, you can make us up at any point and it freshens the team up, and it could be anyone, and you look better. Bailey had an impact on the game coming off the bench last week against Arsenal, but I just can't escape from at the moment that those two, and I don't like to call, but I'm not calling them out.
No,
just talking because we're on a podcast talking about Villa and talking about football. Villa are not getting enough out of Luca Dean, and they are not getting enough out of Leon Bailey. Now, Luca Dean probably did some nice things defensively, but it's just not the left back that I remember watching for Everton and for France. I'm not seeing the 25-30 million pound left back that I thought Villa had signed when they were upgrading from Target. And with Bailey as well, I suppose Kevin Hatchard came on one of our shows a couple of weeks ago, and he said this is what Bailey was like in Germany. But his numbers looked really strong in Germany from what I saw. But I guess if you were to look on the face of it, his numbers for Villa this season probably look half decent for a team that's sitting 11th in the Premier League. But just on the eye test alone, I'm watching those two, and I'm severely underwhelmed. And for the money Villa have spent on those two, Villa can't afford to be spending that kind of money on two players that are offering very little, and then people are coming off the bench and being better than them. Villa can't afford for that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I thought Luca Dean that was one of his better defensive performances in the last probably since it's restarted after the World Cup. I think that was, but he was solid. I thought he was solid.
Then again, on the ball, Neil, the ball away a few, and he wasn't alone. He gives the ball away a few times. I could notice Matty Cash on the opposite flank. He felt busy, felt industrious, felt like he was involved in the game. Yeah. My overarching thing with Luca Dean at the moment is, and you're right, he did nothing wrong defensively. He got the ball away a few times, but he wasn't alone with that. But in general, I'm not seeing enough defensively from him, but I'm not seeing enough going the other way at all to justify his selection. At least when I'm watching Moreno, and they're different types of fullbacks. Yeah. But I'm feeling like Moreno's in the game. He's involved in the game. I believe he was involved in the lead up to the second goal in the passing and getting through and having that attack for the second goal. So when he's on the pitch, he might not be perfect defensively, but I'm thinking at least he's impacting it the other way, and it's very early days for him. Luca Dean's been here for a year now, and my overriding memory of him is a free kick against Manchester United and not a lot else.
Yeah, he did in this game, but my only real memory of him attacking in this game was the cross he put in when Watkins
Yeah,
had his
good
header
cross. Yeah, that's
saved.
fair. That was a good cross. So me
Uh,
saying he's not impacting the game in the
yeah.
final third. That
No,
should have been.
but
That
it's
should
the
have been a
only
goal.
one. It's the only one I can think of. Whereas, you know, I was probably critical of him being in that position too many times to make those crosses and being
Yeah,
that essential, like
yeah.
the guy who has to be in position, stand there to deliver the cross. Whereas he didn't get that many opportunities, and maybe it could have just been because he was tasked with defending Iwobi there, and maybe someone sat him down and said, "Listen, stop and defend because we pay you to defend and everything else is a bonus." Matty Cash had to defend at the weekend, and I loved that battle he had with Dwight McNeil. It was like
Yeah,
a
it's a good one.
fullback winger battle from the late 90s, early 2000s. It was a
It's
proper
prime
Premier League
Barclays.
battle.
Prime Barclays now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a throwback because they were going at each other. You know, Dwight McNeil was trying things, and Matty Cash was reacting to them. And yes, he was whipping balls into the box, but you know, Matty Cash was keeping him in areas whereby he had to whip balls into the box because he couldn't do much more out there. And I was very impressed with how Matty Cash positionally and with how he was very disciplined in that situation, because a lot of players would just have turned around and resorted to booting fellas up and down the field, and that, like, Ashley Young would have definitely crippled him at one stage, you know. So there was no yellow card coming there from Cash, and it's something that we've bemoaned as well, and we think we did it recently as well, where we spoke that at times Emery has been hopping up and down on the line with regards to Matty Cash's defensive positioning. He got it spot on, and maybe that was the discussion. Maybe it was the discussion between everybody was, okay, our fullbacks can no longer be that outlet for the overlap, or maybe they're just not going to be that away from home. We're going to play that narrow midfield. And Ollie, best of luck to you, but you're going to have to do something special up top to get that goal. And while I thought he played well, his hold-up play was pretty decent. His header against the crossbar, or that was saved by Pickford.
Good save. You can't legislate for that. It's
Brilliant
just an
save.
unbelievable save.
Brilliant save. But he stood up and he took a penalty, and we know he's missed them in the past, and he went straight down the middle high, and fair play to him. He's after getting that record of 5-5, and who's to say he won't make it 6-6 against Crystal Palace this weekend?
He said since he wants to score in every game now going into the season. Yeah. He's 100% got some confidence back.
Oh yeah.
I think I still maintain, I say this every week, I think his all-round game this season has been good. Yes, there's the odd bad touch here and there, but he wouldn't be alone in that. I just think he's having a good season. When this was before his 5-game run, I felt like he was having a good season. I guess the disappointing thing for him in recent weeks has been he's been getting the goals, but Villa haven't been getting any points. So his goals haven't meant anything. As much as he'll enjoy putting the ball in the back of the net, Villa haven't been doing the job down the other end. His goal for these to make it 5 in a row has meant something, and it was a real calm penalty. That's a good penalty. That is just putting it down the middle. If in doubt, just smash the ball down the middle and hope for the best. And that's what he did. And I'm delighted for him because he copped a lot of flack when Ings went, which I didn't particularly agree with. I don't fully agree with the Ings sale. But Watkins has been Villa's most impactful striker since Danny Ings has arrived at the club for me still. I know he's played more games, but Watkins suits the Premier League, the modern day Premier League, especially when you're playing away from home. Watkins suits more of the lone striker role than Danny Ings does. And I know he played with two up front now, but I think even if Ings was here, I don't think we'd have seen Ings and Watkins playing alongside each other very much because Emery wants his strikers to drift wide. Watkins is having an unbelievable impact at the moment, and you can see he's got some belief back, he's got some confidence back, and he's really enjoying his football. And Crystal Palace at home next week is a great chance to cement that record and make it 6 in a row. And then we start looking at the Premier League record now, because then Jamie Vardy, was it 11 games in a row or something like that?
Yeah.
Can you imagine? That's something to aim for the end of the season, because if he does do what he says and scores every week, he'll smash that record. But that would be nice. Maybe start. I mean, I've cursed him now, and he won't score next week. But let's go for the Premier League record, Ollie Watkins. Let's say about that.
Yeah, that would be nice. Be nice to have that as well, you know, under his belt. And look, if he scores every week, I know we've just been saying there that he has been scoring previously, and Villa haven't been getting the results, but that can only last for so long. You know, in games like Crystal Palace, you're going to need to score. Like, if you can score a goal and be resolute at the back, you've every chance of winning that game. You've every chance of winning the game against Leeds if you can score one goal. You've every chance of winning a game against Chelsea at the moment if you can score one goal, and they're the games that are coming up. Bournemouth, they're all the games that are coming up at the moment. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid and I'm not getting overly positive with regards to it, but it's something I've said under Unai Emery, and I said it prior to the losing streak that we had, the 3-in-a-row losing streak, was if every game Villa go into, you kind of think that there's a possibility we could win at 1-0 or 2-1 under
Keep
Unai
scoring.
Emery.
We haven't not scored yet under Emery. Again, I'm killing us ahead of the weekend there. But, we've scored every week under Emery so far.
And we need to break this duck against Crystal Palace as well. They've been a real bogey team for us recently. So we need to break that duck. Am I right in saying this is at the Palace?
We beat them on Boxing Day, didn't we, a few years ago at Villa Park when there was no fans there. I remember that.
Away from home, I think we've got a horrible record, don't we?
We lost this season. We won last season in one of Gerrard's first games at Selhurst. But I can remember last season's home game vividly. It was just a poor game. You were watching, thinking, "What are Villa doing there?" They went 1-0 up and just conceded a late goal to Jeffrey Schlupp. It's a different Villa now. They've got, this is a good game now to build, and they've got to win again. There'll be some confidence seeping through the side again. When you lose 3 in a row, rightly or wrongly, you will have a bit of self-doubt. You will lose a bit of confidence, and then you win a game. And bang, your confidence is straight back up again. So Villa go to that game. Palace aren't in the best of form. They're having a bit of a funny season. Crystal Palace, I know their fans are a little bit worried about being sucked into a relegation battle. But, you've won at Everton now, which, no one had beaten Sean Dyche. I know there's only been 2 games at Goodison, but no one had beat Sean Dyche. Everton, Goodison, Villa went there. And they did it, and there's every reason that they can carry on now and have a little winning streak, which is what we all want to see. Villa's record generally still under Emery, despite those 3 games in a row. He's strong, especially the away record, as we discussed at the top of the show. So, we're feeling in a good place again. But your weekend's always so much better when Villa have won.
100%, yeah.
You feel so differently about everything when Villa win.
And you feel so different for the rest of the week going into the next game. You're like, I think we can win this now. And as I say, that's the hopium, that we're all hooked up to as Aston Villa fans. And but it is like it's okay to say that listen, all the teams that we play are either level on points with us in Chelsea's from Chelsea's point of view, or below us in the league in the next 4 games. And if Aston Villa are to puff out their chest and do what we all said we wanted to do at the start of the season. Well, I definitely said it was Villa can start to take points and start to beat the teams that they beneath them in the league, as in from a standings point of view, or beat the teams around them, take points off the teams around them. And then anything you get from the Cities, Uniteds, whoever else is gravy then on top. That would be progress for Aston Villa because it's something we haven't done in quite a while. And this is going to prove it because all these teams are in and around us or they're below us in the league at the moment. So we've got a good stretch of that to look forward to. And that's really kind of a marking post, I think, for Aston Villa and to see how Unai Emery is progressing with this team. Because, as I said, it's a mini battle. It's a mini league we have we have here. Like, as I said, we're not going to go down. We're 4 points ahead of Crystal Palace. We win at the weekend. We're 7 points ahead of Crystal Palace, and we will Chelsea aren't going to win. Chelsea may never win again, so we likely jump Chelsea and are 1 point behind Brentford. So it's a mini league we're in at the moment, and we seem to be on top of it with Chelsea. And it's a case of who's actually going to break that ceiling and try and really traverse up the league. Because since Unai Emery comes in, we just seem to have been stuck in 11th place.
Yeah, I'm happy with that because I felt like we were only travelling in one direction before he came in. I was expecting bottom 3, in all honesty, if Steven Gerrard had continued. So nothing wrong with 11th. I'm relatively happy with that, but I do think top half is there to be had. And that in itself is progress because Villa haven't finished in the top half since 2010, 2011, if my maths is correct in my head, when they finished 9th on around 42, 43 points. I don't know why I remember that. I think it's because Blues went down. I remember the end of that season.
Was that Gerard Houllier?
Yeah, Julia. Well, it was Gary McAllister at the time, but they beat Liverpool at Villa Park on the last day and somehow jumped to 9th. And I remember thinking, how on earth have we finished 9th this season? We looked like we were going down for a long period of it. So there's every chance Villa can get top half, and that in itself would be progress for the football club because they've not done it for a long time. Neil, thank you ever so much for chatting with me today. Enjoyed that, as I always do, talking to you. Few bits of admin. 1874 will be out tonight, probably around 10 p.m. I would think, myself and Global Greg Evans from The Athletic, talking through all the recent articles he's done on The Athletic and what's going on at Aston Villa in the Aston Villa in the football club, Aston Villa in the world of Aston Villa as well. Greg, of course, was in the press box on Saturday, so we'll talk to him. Then a special show tomorrow night, which is Tuesday, again, live at 10 p.m. We've got Neil Cutler coming on, so we're going to be chatting to him, I presume, about Emi Martinez. We're going to be going through all the goalkeepers that Neil worked with his time at Aston Villa and go through how it worked, how he felt with them, how all keepers are different, and then we'll take some questions as well if people are live, because I know Cuts himself is looking to he's getting into YouTube. He's launching a channel soon, so he'll be looking to hear from people and answer some questions. So that'd be good to have big Cuts on tomorrow night, and then we'll be back with all the usual pre-match preview, Stato preview towards the end of the week. Neil, thank you ever so much again. Adam, thank you very much for your flawless producing. Haven't seen if anyone's been watching live, but if you have, appreciate it. I know it's a bit of a funny time. Thank you very much. And if you're catching up and watching as well, we thank you. As I say, 10 p.m. tonight, 1874, up the Villa.